Okay, and we're live. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Church of Grace. My name is Patrick Hayes, and today is Friday. I think it's June 26th, and tonight we are in part 5 of the prophet Zephaniah. And we are really only I think we're starting in verses 7 and 8. So if you can believe it, the first 4 parts of this book, we went over a lot of background. That's what we did. So we're going to pick it up in verses 7 and 8. So if you have your Bible, open it up to the book of Zephaniah. And I'm going to give everyone a caveat before we even get into it. I'm going to tell you this. I expected the lowest attendance that we've had in a long time tonight because of so many families that told me they weren't going to be here. So in a typically, cowardly fashion, I decided tonight's going to be the night where I'm really going to get into some not only controversial subjects, but subjects that'll upset people because no one's going to be here, and that's the best time to do it. And then Joel brings his mom, and then Dale comes back with his wife, and Greg's back, and and Tony's here for Anthony or Tony? Do you either? Okay. Is here for the first time, and I'm going to get into some stuff where some of you are going to think that I'm crazy. Okay? I assure you, there's a chance that I am. But what I'm going to ask you to do is just bear with me because I'm going to, beat up on some subjects and I'm going to get into some stuff that you've never heard of before and give me a little bit of rope. So that's all I'm going to say. Now, this is something else. This has been the way that I do it ever since I started preaching. When I'm writing a message, I believe, as I pray, that God is going to give me what to say and not say for that message. Sometimes they're real easy, vanilla messages. Sometimes they're messages where I know it's going to make someone mad. What I have never done once in my life is not taught what is written down in front of me. So I don't care how many visitors show up, I am not changing the message. I believe that you're here on purpose tonight. Doesn't happen, Dale. Yep. Okay, so now I feel so much better. So tonight we're going to pick it up in verses 7 and 8. However, we're going to start with a review. In his opening comments, Zephaniah condemns 3 types of idolatry. What are they? And could someone give me one of them in order, please? What's the first type of idolatry Zephaniah condemns? If you need a hint, I can give you one, but I think someone took notes from last week. Lucas, you got it? Maybe? You're thinking about a hand up? Kyle? Yeah? You don't have to. You use whatever term you want. Yeah. Okay, good. Astrology. Okay, worship of the heavenly host, right? The sun, moon, stars, and planets. Very good. That's exactly the right answer. Okay, the first one is worshiping the hosts of heaven, and you can read about that in Zephaniah chapter 1, verse 5. These people worship the sun, moon, stars, and planets. This form of idolatry is called zodiacal worship. And this last week, I had someone ask me after the church service, Patrick, what is the zodiac? So here we go. We're going to have a little review on it. Now remember, if you're not a big Bible reader, or maybe you haven't read Zephaniah in a while, or you don't hang out in the prophets, understand when the prophet shows up, you done messed up. Okay? You were not doing well. And he is there to set you straight. No prophet in the Bible shows up and says, hey, you guys, you're killing it. Y'all are doing great. Just keep doing the same thing. I mean, we're just thrilled. Okay? Me and the Lord, we are thrilled. That's not what it is. The greatest prophetic message was Jonah. And it was 8 words. Look it up. Go to the book of Jonah. It's only 2-3 chapters. Read it when you get home. And his message was 40 days and you're toast. That was it. No offering, no opening prayer, no song service, 8 words, and he left town. So understand, as we're reading through Zephaniah, these folks are in trouble. And the first group that he gets into is these folks that worship the sun, moon, stars, and planets. Obviously, God only wants us worshiping him, and the nation of Israel was not doing that. So, the way that the zodiac works is that the sun and planets pass through a small group of constellations along an imaginary line called the ecliptic. So this is if you think about our solar system being a record, in the middle of that record is the sun. Okay? Along that line are these constellations, and all the planets pass through them, and the sun passes through them throughout the year. So in astrology, the zodiac is divided up into 12 constellations, even though technically the sun passes through 13 of these constellations in the ecliptic during the course of a calendar year. So astrology is a system of divination, claiming that the positions of the celestial bodies, by that I mean the sun, the moon, the stars, and the planets, directly influence human behavior, personality traits, and earthly events. People believe they can tell the future based on the position of the sun, moon, stars, and planets at different times. Based on the time of the year you were born, the astrologer would say, your personality is going to look like this. Based on the time that you were born, the astrologer would say, your life is going to look like this. The 12 zodiac signs are grouped into 4 elements: fire, earth, air, and water. Yes, that is the plot of the Disney movie, Frozen, #2. The belief is that the location of the moon or a planet in relation to the 12 constellations of the zodiac will determine events in your life and even tell your future. This is straight up divination. This is witchcraft. It is not only forbidden by God and a capital crime, it is also stupid and wrong. So, we heard about Amber and Jesse having a baby, right? Okay, I'll give you an example of how much sense the zodiac makes. So yesterday, when Amber was in labor, she was at the hospital giving birth to their baby boy. I called up Jesse, and I instructed Jesse to tell his wife that she needs to give birth in the northeast corner of the hospital room while facing the door. And if she could just envision a rabbit flying atop a dragon, that would increase the odds of the children getting the right lottery numbers as they grow up. You think that's stupid? You can guarantee the child will grow up to be stupid and poor if they believe that its personality is affected by the position of the sun, moon, stars, and planets in relation to some constellations on the day of their birth. That's how foolish it is. And people would rather believe in that, which is hokum. It's a word for the day. Hokum. Look it up. They'd rather believe in that than the idea that there is a God who created us. So the signs of the zodiac, astrology, and your horoscope are witchcraft. God hates them. Furthermore, they're just wrong, and as I said before, I'm happy using the word stupid. Any questions? Okay, what is the next form of idolatry condemned by Zephaniah? Does anyone remember the word? What was that? Boom, very good. Syncretism. Okay, now, see this? This is a Church of Grace mouth guard. I gave these out several years ago. as a present to everybody at a New Year's Eve party that we had. There's only 2 left. I thought it was hysterical. Because the job of a preacher from time to time is to wind up and just punch you right in the face with this book. It's his job. Yeah. Okay? So put in your mouth guards, because here it comes. Satanism is the mixing of 2 separate and oftentimes contradictory beliefs. For the Christian and the Jews, it was the mixing of God's ways and paganism and idolatry, mixing them together. This is very, very popular today. There is a simple, clear, and obvious example of this in the world today, and that is Roman Catholicism. Emperor Constantine tried to mix Christianity with all the paganism in the world that existed back in the 3rd century. The state-run version of Christianity was called Roman Catholicism. I was raised Roman Catholic. If you would like to hear more about that, I would be happy to talk to you. Okay, now we're going to rip off the Band-Aid, so get ready. The 2 most obvious examples of this today in American Christianity are Christmas and Easter. Now, any Christian who has never heard that before, I understand how crazy you think I am right now. But give me 2.5 hours and I can convince you. We're not going to take that time today, but I'm going to show you how it works. You go to churchofgracegj.com, our website. You click on the media tab. You scroll down to the series called Paganism. You open that up, and you're going to see these 2 videos. There's more than 2. The history of paganism and pagan Christmas. I tell everybody that comes to our church to watch these 2 videos. Now, the reason I do this is because if you're going to run away from here screaming, I'd rather you get it over with quickly. But if you can make it through these 2 videos and say to yourself, dang, I never knew that. That is disturbing. And I ask you to do it at home, on your own, and then do your own homework. Come back and call old Patrick crazy. Won't be the first time it happened. But after you do that, you must pick the red pill or the blue pill. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. Now, if you don't know what this is, okay, this is the movie The Matrix, all right? And the analogy that we're, using here, the red pill and the blue pill and what they represent, is worth it to watch the movie. It was a great movie. Now, you know what? Okay, I just realized something. It was made in the 90s. I don't remember how long ago it was I saw that movie. I don't know how terrible it is. So I don't, while the pastor just recommended that you go watch this movie, I have no idea what it's rated. I have no idea what the parental guidelines are. So bear with me, give me a little slack on that statement. But just for the idea of the red and the blue pill, you should, I think it's worth seeing this movie. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you, and I don't have time to explain to you Morpheus and Neo and the pills and the Matrix and the whole thing. Okay, it was, that's what the movie's for. But almost all of Christianity grabs a fistful of blue pills and continues to keep paganism and idolatry in the center of their Christian lives. That's what the Jews did back in the days of Zephaniah. That's what the Christians do today. I am a red-pilled pastor. I'm also a 1 or a 5-star rating on Google. I don't get anything in between. It's 1 or 5. I have no problem teaching the truth no matter how crazy it sounds. Because of that, I understand that this church isn't for everyone. The Christian cannot take what God commands us to do and then add to that whatever pagan, idolatrous stuff they want and still call it Christian. We cannot do that. God hates that. So I tell you all this because I want to be up front with you. I don't want you thinking that I'm sneaking up on you. So who I am and who this church is sometimes unpopular. But I will tell you this, I will never allow the mixing of paganism and idolatry into this church and into this book and into Christianity. I ain't doing it. I will not take a soft view of it, and I will not be kind in my language when describing those that do. Any questions? That wasn't even the hard part. That was like medium heat. We're turning it up in a minute. Like I said, take your time, go home, watch those videos, tell me I'm crazy. Okay? Dale, it'll give us something to talk about on Sunday at the campfire, I'll tell you that. It'll be entertaining if nothing else. What was the next form of idolatry condemned by Zephaniah? Number 3. Anyone remember? Lucas, you got a notebook in front of you. You want to guess? No? That's fine. Moses, was that a hand raised? No? Anyone? Very good, Bill. Not seeking the Lord. In the first 2, if the first 2 forms of idolatry Zephaniah condemned do not bother you, this last one should. Zephaniah breaks it down into 2 groups. Those that are backslidden. They used to follow the Lord. They do not anymore. Now, the second group is those who have never cared to worship their Creator. For the Christian today, we will all get to this point at times in our life as a Christian where we are backslidden. We don't have it in us. We just don't care. We're not putting in any time. We don't want to read our Bible. We don't want to pray. We don't want to go to church. It's a burden. We hate it. You're going to get there because you're a sinner just like all the rest of us. You're going to go through hard times. Have you guys ever read 1st and 2nd Kings? Don't answer that. I'm assuming y'all have. But in there, we have 2 prophets. We have Elijah and then his successor, Elisha. Elijah was one of the most powerful prophets, I would argue, the most powerful prophet as far as seeing hand of God, powerful miracles happen. He had more miracles than any 2 prophets put together. And after one of the biggest miracles, when he was facing off against all of the pagan idolatrous priests of Balaam at Mount Carmel, when he was done with one of the most impressive chapters in the entire Bible, how did he feel in the next chapter? Yeah, he ran. That's true. What else? Give me another detail. He was scared. He did feel terribly alone. And what did he ask God to do? To kill him. He was suicidal. He didn't have it in him to do it himself, but he asked God, just kill me now. My point is, every Christian goes through low times. Every Christian goes through hard times. We're all going to be in this place at some point. The good news is, the solution is simple and it always works. You got to change your morning routine. You got to change your evening routine. And no matter how down and out you feel with God, no matter how distant you feel with God, you can feel back on top and feel just like you did back in the good old days, like that. We can go downhill for weeks or months, and we can get back to the place where we started in less than 24 hours. It's wonderful. We can feel like we never left. Because as soon as we take one step to God, we're going downhill and downhill and downhill. And we're like, okay, and we turn around to take one step and we bump into God. Because He's right there. In your evening routine, set an alarm. Then you're going to go for a walk. 15 minutes out, 15 minutes back. Leave your phone off and just talk to God. Talk to God about whatever's going on in your life. Talk to God about how you feel. Talk to God about how you want to feel. Talk to God about what you're struggling with. Good thing to do is go through a little gratitude list of all the things that you're grateful for that God's blessed you with. You do that one time, and it's going to taste so good, you're going to be like, man, I want to do that again tomorrow. Then you go home, you set your alarm, you're going to get up 1 hour earlier. Okay, that's it. It's going to get up an hour earlier. And when you're having your breakfast and your coffee, you're going to read 5 chapters of the Bible. If you can't read 5 chapters of the Bible, read 4. Right? Can't read 4? All right, read 3. Oh, you can't read 3? Okay, then grow up and be an adult. It's 3 chapters. There's a million different ways to read through the Bible. All of them are fine, okay? I have the way that I like to recommend, but it doesn't matter, okay? We just need to get back into the book, and we need to start learning about what God wants us to know. And that's it. You're back on track. You feel good, and you're ready to do it again. All right, let's read Zephaniah chapter 1, verses 7 and 8. Verse 7, hold thy peace at the presence of the Lord God, for the day of the Lord is at hand, for the Lord hath prepared a sacrifice, he hath bid his guests. And it shall come to pass in the day of the Lord's sacrifice that I will punish the princes and the king's children and all such as are clothed with strange apparel. So last week we talked about the day of the Lord. Okay, the day of the Lord is a big phrase in the Bible. We first read about it in the prophet Joel. And he's referring to one day, and it's such a popular theme in the Bible that almost every other prophet steals that phrase from Joel and uses it when they write their prophecies. So here is our timeline. It's a little busy. Okay, the prophet Zephaniah is going to be prophesying right here during the days, I believe, of King Josiah. And there's a scripture reference if you want to read the story. And then what we have is the first, second, and third siege of the Babylonians when they come to Jerusalem and lay siege to the city. I believe that Zephaniah is referring to the destruction of Jerusalem that happens in 586 BC here during the third siege of Jerusalem. In verse 7, God says he has prepared a sacrifice, he hath bid his guests. Now when you read this, a lot of people miss the fact the guests are the sacrifice. Later on in chapter 2, we're going to read about another group who will avoid the wrath of God. They're not going to be affected by it. But this group here in verse 7 are going to go through the wrath of God. And the wrath of God that is poured out on Jerusalem has a name: the army of the Babylonians. The sacrifice mentioned in 7 and 8 are this day of judgment when many people will die. God is comparing them to a sacrifice. In verse 8, God is going to punish the king and his children. The children of the king were wearing strange apparel. The word strange means like a stranger, a foreigner. That means clothing from a foreign land. And if it's a foreign land, what type of land is it? It's a pagan one. The king's family enjoyed the clothing and the fashion of Nineveh and of Babylon. Now, the Bible instructs us on how to dress. The Bible talks a lot about clothing. Dressing however we want, or dressing like the pagans, is not acceptable to God. Not one. I don't need them. I could care less. The clothes they were wearing also shows their heart. Their heart was hard. It was rebellious. The clothes that many Christians wear today also show their heart. Now, you want to run off all the women at a church all at once, you just start talking to them about their clothes and how some of their clothing is a sin. Clothes, skin tight. Sometimes I wonder how Christian women get in them. Clothes that show so much skin, you would think they were on their way to the beach and not church. Question is, Christian women, who are you showing your body off to? Christian fathers, what are you letting your daughter out of the house in? Christian husbands, what are you letting your wife out of the house wearing? It's the dad's fault. It's the husband's fault. Who here thinks that women and girls who are Christians should wear the same thing the girls in the public high schools are wearing? See, show of hands. Who thinks that's appropriate? Who here thinks that Christian women and girls should be wearing the same thing that the girls at the university are wearing? My notes say pause for long, uncomfortable silence because people are all too scared to yell amen. Back to verse 8. God points out that the clothing of these fellas shows their heart. That's what he's saying. Zephaniah says God will punish the king and his children because of their heart. Now, when the Babylonians arrived, what happened to the king and his children? We read about this in 2 Kings chapter 25, verse 7. And they slew the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, and put out the eyes of Zedekiah, and bound him with fetters of brass, and carried him to Babylon. They knew how to punish people back then. That is the punishment for King Zedekiah. That's what he receives. Chains. Yep, any kind of restraint. Yeah. Do you know the type of restraint they used? The Babylonians learned this from the Assyrians. They would put a hook in the nose of the prisoner, and they would tie it off to the neck of the prisoner walking in front of them. And you'd have a line that would stretch miles long. Yeah. Everyone was real careful not to trip. Yep. Okay, let's read Zephaniah chapter 1, verses 9, 10, and 11. In the same day also will I punish all those that leap on the threshold, which fill their masters' houses with violence and deceit. And it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord, that there shall be the noise of a cry from the fish gate, and a howling from the second, and a great crashing from the hills. Howl, you inhabitants of Maktesh, for all the merchant people are cut down, all they that bear silver are cut off. In verse 9, there is a superstition amongst the Philistines where you should not tread on the threshold, like the entrance of a building on the door. Okay. This comes from the story in the Bible in 1 Samuel chapter 5, when the idol of Dagon, their pagan deity, was destroyed by God in front of the Ark of the Covenant upon the threshold. People would not walk on the threshold. That is where the custom of carrying a new bride over the threshold comes from. Look it up. People thought evil spirits and demons resided in the threshold, and you could pick up a curse through the soles of your feet. So you would carry your new bride across the threshold for good luck. Now, what is this telling us? This is telling us that many of the Jews in Israel had adopted pagan practices and pagan superstitions in their life. That's what was going on. Again, God does not want to stop. God hates when we do this. And honestly, most American Christians are oblivious to this concept of mixing in paganism into their Christianity. And I hate to say it, no one teaches on it. Because you'd run people off if you started pointing out all the things that are pagan. Verse 10, the fish gate. Anyone know what the fish gate is? The fish gate is currently what we call the Damascus gate in Jerusalem. That was the prominent and largest gate as far as an entrance into the old city of Jerusalem. The open plaza just outside of the gate served as the social and political gathering place. It was kind of, I mean, I know it sounds silly to say the gate of the city was the center of the city, but you got to understand that within the gate of the city, that's where politics took place. That's where court took place. Whenever you read in the Old Testament about someone who committed a capital crime, we would drag them out to the gate of the city and stone them with stones, because that's where court took place. The gate of the city was big and open. It was covered, so it was in the shade, so there was always a marketplace there. People that were coming into the city to trade, okay, all the new stuff, it would show up in the gate of the city, so the people wanted to be there to get the new stuff first, get the best deal kind of thing. The Damascus gate would be idiomatic of the entire city. If it were destroyed, the whole city would be destroyed, so to speak. Now, in verse 10, after the fish gate, we read the phrase, the second, in verse 10. That phrase makes a little more sense in Hebrew. It is talking about all the subsequent. So you have the fish gate, and then it's talking about the rest of the gates, okay? Not the main one, okay, but what you would consider as the other gates in the city. And what you find is that from the Damascus gate, what is there? There's a cry. That's what it says. The other gates, there's howling. And then there is a great crashing from the hills. So you see, the judgment gets worse, and it gets worse, and it gets worse. In the days of Zephaniah, Jerusalem was a city on a hill. Now, Jerusalem is in the same location as it was back then, but it is way bigger and it's more spread out. You understand? Whereas before, it used to be on what we would call Mount Moriah. Okay, Mount Moriah was a long hill. Jerusalem was high up. Have you ever noticed when you're reading about when people are going to go up to Jerusalem? Whether they're north of Jerusalem or south of Jerusalem, they always talk about going up to Jerusalem because it's elevated. So in the days of Zephaniah, Jerusalem was a city on a hill surrounded by valleys. Today, one of those valleys is filled in. There are other valleys, but the city of Jerusalem has grown so much it spreads out beyond that. So that means that on the other sides of those valleys were hills. I believe verse 10 is talking about the entire city being destroyed. You got the gate, you have the rest of the gates, all the way to the hills. And it gets worse, and it gets worse, and it gets worse. In verse 11, Maktesh, that is where a market was situated. That used to sit next to the current location of the Wailing Wall. In this verse, I believe God is describing the economic destruction of Jerusalem because of that large market in the old city. All of that was coming. And we know when it was coming. It was coming when the Babylonians would show up and they would destroy the city. Okay, we got two more verses we're going to read, and then we're going to be done. 12 and 13, that's as far as we're going to get. Verse 12. And it shall come to pass at that time that I will search Jerusalem with candles and punish the men that are settled on their lees, that say in their heart, the Lord will not do good, neither will he do evil. Therefore their goods shall become a booty, and their houses a desolation. They shall also build houses, but not inhabit them, and they shall plant vineyards, but not drink the wine thereof. Search Jerusalem with candles. What does that mean? So there's a custom at the beginning of Passover, and that custom has to do with a candle and a feather and sometimes a wooden spoon. And what you're doing is you're using the feather as a micro dust broom to sweep up the little crumbs of leaven in the house. And you'd pick them up and sweep them into the spoon, and you would search with a candle. The candle would illuminate all the little dark crevices, and you would go through the house, and you were doing this with your children, and this was something that is very common for anyone who is celebrating Passover. At this time, you're getting rid of all the leaven because of the Feast of Unleavened Bread that's going to happen the next day. So you would start with this feather, and you'd sweep up all the little crumbs, and it was a game that you'd play with the kids. God is saying that he will search Jerusalem with candles. That means very carefully. He won't miss a single man who is settled on his lead. The people of Jerusalem thought to themselves, God is not involved in my life. They thought, it says, they thought God does not punish the wicked and he does not bless the obedient. I don't need to worry about God. The Lord will not do good, neither will he do evil. God is saying none will escape who think this way. Settled on his lees. It is an image of the crust formed on the bottom of a wine bottle that has been left undisturbed for too long. It refers to indifference. The people are spiritually stagnant, unable to be moved. In verse 13, Zephaniah says, you are going to build a house but not live in it, and you are going to plant a vineyard and not drink the wine. What is Zephaniah talking about? He's telling the nation of Israel they are going to be removed from their land. That house that you bought, you don't get to move in. That vineyard that you planted, you ain't going to be here when it's harvest time. You guys are being taken away. God said this would happen all the way back when Moses was in the desert leading the nation of Israel on over to the promised land. Before the nation of Israel crossed over the Jordan River and got into the promised land, Moses has one last talk with the nation of Israel. That last talk is called the book of Deuteronomy. The reason Moses covers the entire law is because everyone that was present at Mount Sinai is dead. They had to wander through the wilderness for 40 years because of their disobedience. Everyone 20 years old and upward is gone, and we have this new generation. Everyone below 20 years old, they grew up in the wilderness wanderings, and now they are going to enter into the promised land, but they were not there for the miracles in Egypt, the 10 plagues. They were not there for the Red Sea crossing, or if they were very young and probably don't remember it. So Moses goes over all of it before they go into the promised land to make sure everyone knows what's expected. God says, if you obey me, you will be blessed. If you disobey me, you will be cursed. Toward the end of the monologue, God says that if he must, he will remove Israel from the land. To teach them a lesson, they will lose their country, their capital city, and their temple. In Deuteronomy 28, starting in verse 47, because thou servest not the Lord thy God, and with gladness of heart, for abundance of all things, therefore serve thine enemies which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. The Lord shall bring a nation end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue understand, a nation not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young, a nation from far away come, they will have no mercy. And he shall eat the fruit of thy cattle and the fruit of thy land until thou be destroyed, which also shall not leave either corn, wine, or oil, or the increase of thy kind, or flocks of sheep, until he have destroyed thee. Now, why does God say that there will not be wine, oil, corn, or sheep? What is God saying? Those aren't random ingredients. God didn't pick 4 ingredients out of a hat. They have meaning. Everything has meaning. Look, Kyle? Same idea. Those are the ingredients needed for sacrifice in the temple. Without corn, oil, wine, and sheep, you have no sacrifice. You will not be able to make a sacrifice at the temple. God's saying, you will not be able to practice your religion. I'm removing that from you. This thing that we did, that established community between you and I, that gave us this fellowship, this one thing that we had where we can be close, you don't have it anymore. I'm taking that away. Now this is interesting. What else is God saying here? Because if you read between the lines, God is telling the nation of Israel something else. When he says you will have no corn, wine, oil, or sheep, what is he saying? Kyle, what do you think? That's exactly what he's saying. That he will destroy the temple. Why didn't he just say, I'm going to destroy the temple? There is no temple. They're not even in the promised land yet. They didn't even know they were going to get a temple. They were working out of the tabernacle that they carried with them. God is telling the nation of Israel, he's doing this so one day someone can look back and say, holy cow, God told us he was going to destroy the temple that we worshiped at before we even had one. Continuing on, last verse, and he shall besiege thee in all thy gates until thy high and fenced walls come down, wherein thou trustedest throughout all thy land. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates throughout all thy land, which the Lord thy God hath given thee. The siege lasted almost 3 years. There were 3 sieges of the Babylonians against Jerusalem. The first one was basically not even a siege. Okay, the king was scared to death. He just gave Nebuchadnezzar everything he wanted, and they just packed up and went back to Babylon. Okay, the next siege was about 3 months long. But this last one, see what happened was during the first siege, okay, King, what's his name? I can't even remember. Let's see. Let's go here. Okay, during the first siege, King Jehoiakim saw Nebuchadnezzar coming, and he just ran out and threw gold at him and said, please go away. Nebuchadnezzar said, no problem. And Nebuchadnezzar put in place a vassal king. He said, okay, you can be king, but you report to me. This is now Babylonian territory. And then what happened was King Jehoiakim he dies, and King Jehoiakim takes his place. He was also an evil king. And then he rebels against Nebuchadnezzar, and he's like, all right, I could come back. And he marches his army back, and they lay siege to Jerusalem, and that lasts 3 years. And he takes, this time, a whole bunch more gold, all the precious stuff out of the temple, whole bunch more slaves, and the king. And he puts another king in place. And that king is King Zedekiah. And he's supposed to be another vassal king. Okay, you're Jewish. You're from the royal line of Judah. You can still be in charge here, but you report to me, you pay taxes to me, and you do exactly what I say. Well, he rebelled. So then Nebuchadnezzar, who's still the general, he's not the king of Babylon at this time, he's still the general, he comes back for siege number 3. And this time, it takes almost 3 years to get into the city. And during that time, that's the whole, not the whole, but it's the majority of the book of the prophet Jeremiah, who was in the capital city of Jerusalem when the siege was going on. and the siege got bad. And we're going to talk more about it later on. But at the end of it, on the 9th of Av in 586 BC, they breached the walls, they destroyed the city, they broke down the walls, they destroyed the temple, and they lit everything on fire. And everyone who was still alive, they took them back as slaves to Babylon. And they remained there for a period of 70 years. Any questions? That's all we got. We're going to get into Zephaniah 14 through 18 next week, so finish up chapter 1. We might even get into chapter 2. Kyle, what you got? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Great question. Okay, so the question is, Zephaniah in this first chapter, is he warning the nation of Israel about Babylon coming, or is he warning us about the end times and a judgment that is coming? Both. And I have a diagram that we're going to kind of draw out. So what we find is that God warns 3 different groups in the book of Zephaniah. One group is the whole world, and that prophecy is for you and I, okay, and it is for the end times. Another prophecy is for specifically Jerusalem and the southern kingdom of Judah, and that's what we're reading through right now. And then there is a third group that gets a prophecy, and then he goes back to Jerusalem and Judah, and then he goes back to the whole world. So he goes back and forth, and you kind of have to map it out. And, you know, I didn't think to put that graphic in this section, but it'll be there for next week. So, yep, but good question. And that's one of the problems with prophecy, like we talked about last week. It's not all neat and clean cut. It's mixed together, and you got to figure out what God is talking about in different parts of the Bible. Okay, great question. Anyone else? Anything on the book of Zephaniah, the World Cup, Bitcoin, aliens? All right, that's easy enough. So we're going to have a word of prayer. We're going to get out of here. Don't forget, folks, for all the fellows, we get together this Sunday at our house. I already forgot what time it is because I don't know. I'm going to be there. I live there. But be sure to come. I think it's 6 o'clock. Okay, thank you, Kyle. So 6 o'clock, come for the fire. It is a lot of fun, and the food's going to be good. So let's see. MacArthur, would you be so kind as to close us in a word of prayer?